The day my grandmother died, I learned that some people wear their masks so well, you'd never guess they were planning to destroy you. I was 22, standing in the funeral home's mahogany-panelled office, when my entire world shifted on its axis. My name is Alana, and I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. I was wrong. The estate in its entirety passes to Gabriel Hudson, the lawyer announced, his voice carrying the weight of finality. My brother's reflection in the window showed the ghost of a smile, there and gone so quickly I almost missed it. "There must be some mistake," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Grandma Eliana promised." "Sweetheart," my mother Ingrid cut in, her manicured hand squeezing my shoulder with practiced sympathy. "Your grandmother knew what she was doing. It's for your own good." The room spun slightly. Just last month, Eliana had held my hand over tea in her sunroom, the light catching the emeralds in her favorite brooch. "Don't worry about the future, dear heart," she'd said. "I've made sure you'll be taken care of." "Can I see the will?" I asked, reaching for the document. The lawyer, Darius, pulled it back slightly. "Everything is in order, Miss Hudson. The will has been properly executed and witnessed." Gabriel cleared his throat. "We should respect grandmother's wishes, Alana. She clearly wanted the estate managed responsibly." I looked to my father, Craig, who stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "But the cottage," I pressed. "She always said, Alana." My mother's voice carried that familiar edge of warning. "Not now. We're here to honor your grandmother's memory, not question her decisions." I fell silent, but my mind raced. Something was wrong. This wasn't the grandmother who taught me to restore antique books, who shared stories of her youth while we planted herbs in her garden. This wasn't the woman who understood my passion for preservation when everyone else called it impractical. The meeting concluded with signatures and handshakes. As we filed out, Gabriel caught up to me in the hallway. "Don't worry, sis," he said, straightening his Italian silk tie. "I'll make sure the family legacy is properly preserved." His smile didn't reach his eyes. That evening, I sat alone in my apartment, turning Grandma Eliana's old locket over in my hands. She'd given it to me on my 18th birthday, making me promise to keep it safe. I'd never opened it. It seemed stuck shut, and I hadn't wanted to damage it. But now, something compelled me to try harder. The clasp resisted, then gave way with a tiny click. Inside, nestled against faded velvet, was a folded slip of paper, yellowed with age. My hands trembled as I opened it. The handwriting was unmistakably Eliana's. "Trust time. Truth always surfaces." I read it again, then again. The words burned into my mind as tears finally spilled over. In that moment, I understood. My grandmother had known. She'd known something might happen, and she'd left me this message. My phone buzzed. A text from Gabriel. "Family dinner tomorrow at the house. Wear something nice. We're celebrating." I typed back, "Okay," with numb fingers, then set the phone down. The locket felt heavy in my palm, its secret message a whisper of hope in the darkness. "I trust you, Grandma," I whispered to the empty room. "I'll wait. I'll watch. And I'll find out what really happened." Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled out the old photo album Eliana had given me years ago. There we were, in the garden, her teaching me how to properly prune roses. Another showed us in her library, surrounded by her beloved first editions. In every photo she wore that knowing smile, like she held secrets the camera couldn't capture. The last photo was from just 2 months ago. She'd insisted on taking it, though she was already weak. "Remember this moment," she'd said, pressing her cheek to mine as the camera clicked. "Remember that some treasures can't be measured in dollars and cents." I touched the locket again, feeling its weight against my chest. Whatever game my family was playing, whatever truth they'd buried, Eliana had left me a breadcrumb trail. I just had to be patient enough to follow it. Gabriel's smug face floated in my memory, his perfectly practiced smile as the lawyer read the will. My mother's warning squeeze, my father's averted eyes. They thought they had won, thought they had silenced me with their "it's for your own good." But Grandma Eliana had taught me better than that. She'd taught me that truth, like the antique books we restored together, sometimes needed gentle, patient hands to reveal its stories. I closed the photo album and made a promise to the darkness. I would wait. I would watch. And when the time was right, I would understand exactly what had been stolen from me and why. 7 years passed like a slow-moving fog. I built my life carefully, deliberately, away from my family's shadow. My tiny apartment wasn't much, but it was mine, paid for with my salary from the university's archival department. Every artifact I restored felt like a small victory, proof that buried things could be brought back to light. Then came the call that would change everything. "Alana?" My mother's voice crackled through the phone. "We need help clearing out the attic. Your father's hip isn't what it used to be, and Gabriel's too busy with his real estate empire." I almost said no. Almost. "When?" "Saturday. Come early, dear, and wear something you don't mind getting dirty." The house looked exactly the same, a colonial monster with perfect landscaping and too many windows. My mother opened the door before I could knock, eyeing my old jeans and t-shirt with barely concealed disapproval. "The attic access is through your old room," she said, already turning away. "I've left some boxes up there. Just sort everything into keep, donate, and trash." My old bedroom had been converted into a home office, all traces of my existence neatly erased. The pull-down attic stairs creaked under my weight as I climbed up, flashlight in hand. The attic air was thick with dust and memories. Boxes labeled in my grandmother's elegant handwriting caught my eye immediately. I moved toward them, but something else made me pause. A slight irregularity in the insulation near the far wall. Years of handling delicate documents had taught me to trust my instincts about things that looked out of place. I moved closer, examining the spot. The insulation was newer there, slightly different in color. I pulled it back carefully. Behind it sat a metal box, about the size of a shoebox, covered in decades of dust. My heart started pounding. "Alana?" My mother's voice floated up from below. "Do you need help?" "No!" I called back, quickly replacing the insulation. "Just getting oriented up here." I spent the next hour methodically sorting through boxes, photographing the metal box's location with my phone, and waiting for my chance. Finally, my mother announced she was starting lunch. The moment I heard her footsteps fade, I retrieved the box. It was locked, but the lock was old, the kind I'd learned to pick during my restoration training for stuck artifact cases. 5 minutes later, it clicked open. Inside, wrapped in acid-free paper, was a document. My hands shook as I unfolded it. Last will and testament of Eliana Hudson. The date, the notary stamp, the witnesses' signatures, everything was there, clear as day. And there, in black and white, To my beloved granddaughter Alana, I leave my cottage at 42 Maple Street, my entire collection of vintage jewelry, and 40% of my remaining estate. Oh my God, I whispered, scanning the rest. This will was different, completely different from the one read at the funeral. A noise downstairs made me jump. Quickly, I photographed every page with my phone, then noticed another envelope at the bottom of the box. It was marked in my grandmother's handwriting. For Alana, only if something doesn't feel right. Footsteps on the stairs. I shoved everything back in the box, returned it to its hiding place, and was examining an old Christmas decoration when my mother's head appeared through the attic opening. "Lunch is ready," she said. "Have you made any progress up here?" I held up the decoration. "Just going through these old boxes. Some real treasures in here." She nodded absently. "Don't get too sentimental. Most of it needs to go." Over lunch, my mother chatted about Gabriel's latest business success, barely noticing that I wasn't eating. My mind was racing, remembering the locket's message. Trust time. Truth always surfaces. "Mom," I said carefully, "do you ever think about Grandma Eliana?" She set down her fork. "Of course, dear. Why?" "Just wondering if she ever mentioned anything to you about her will before she died. A flash of something." Fear crossed her face before she composed herself. "Your grandmother made her wishes very clear. Why are you bringing this up now?" "No reason," I said, forcing a smile. "Just feeling nostalgic, I guess." Later, driving home, I pulled over to read the envelope I'd secretly slipped into my pocket. Inside was a letter, dated 1 month before Eliana died. "My dearest Alana, if you're reading this, then something has gone terribly wrong. Others may try to rewrite my wishes, but know this. You were never forgotten, never less loved. The truth is hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Be patient, be clever, and remember, some battles are won with whispers, not shouts." All my love, Grandma Eliana. I touched the locket at my throat, feeling its familiar weight. 7 years of confusion suddenly crystallized into perfect clarity. Now I knew what had been stolen from me, and I knew exactly what I had to do about it. The monthly family brunch was always an exercise in restraint, but this time felt different. I sat at the country club's terrace, watching my cousin Caroline stir her mimosa, trying to decide how much to reveal. "You seem different today," Caroline said, studying my face. "More focused." I smiled, remembering how she'd been the only one to hug me at the funeral. "Just been thinking about Grandma Eliana lately." "God, I miss her," Caroline sighed. "Remember how she used to sneak us cookies during those awful summer garden parties? And tell us stories about her travels while everyone else was talking business deals?" Caroline nodded, then hesitated. "You know, I never understood what happened with the will. We all wondered why she left you nothing, but figured it was none of our business." The words hit like a physical blow. "What do you mean? We all wondered." "Well, everyone knew how close you two were. She was always talking about your special bond, how you understood the value of history like she did." Caroline leaned forward. "Mom even mentioned once that Eliana had told her the cottage would be yours someday." My coffee cup clattered against its saucer. "Did she say when Eliana told her that?" "Must have been. Maybe a month before she died?" Mom visited her at the hospital. I pulled out my phone, checking the date on the original will I'd photographed. The timing matched perfectly. "Caroline," I said carefully, What would you say if I told you there might be more to the story? Before she could answer, Gabriel's voice boomed across the terrace. There's my favorite sister and cousin. He pulled up a chair, uninvited, discussing my new development project. Actually, I said, we were talking about Grandma Eliana. Something flickered in his eyes. Ancient history, sis. Speaking of which, Mom said you were helping clean the attic. Find anything interesting? Just memories, I replied, watching him closely. And some old papers. He stiffened slightly, then forced a laugh. Probably just boring old receipts. Hey, you should come to my office sometime. See what I've done with Grandma's investment portfolio. Doubled it in the last year alone. After he left, Caroline grabbed my arm. Okay, spill. What's really going on? Not here, I whispered. Meet me at Rosewood Cafe tomorrow at 2. That afternoon, I drove to the retirement community where Audrey, my grandmother's closest friend, still lived. She opened her door with a surprised smile. Alana, what a lovely surprise! Her apartment smelled like lavender and old books, just like Eliana's house used to. I sat on her floral couch, accepting a cup of tea. Audrey, I need to ask you something about Grandma Eliana's last few months. She set down her cup slowly. I've been wondering when you'd come. What do you mean? Your grandmother was worried near the end. She kept saying she needed to make sure everything was properly documented. Audrey's eyes met mine. She made me witness 2 different wills. My hand started shaking. 2? Yes. The first one was very specific about you and the cottage. She was so proud of how you'd learned to appreciate beautiful old things, just like she did. Audrey frowned. Then, your mother started visiting more often. Suddenly there was talk of a new will. Eliana seemed pressured. Did she say anything to you about it? Only that she'd left instructions, that the truth would come out when it needed to. Audrey stood and walked to her bookshelf, pulling out an old photo album. She gave me this for safekeeping. Said to give it to you if you ever came asking questions. Inside were photos I'd never seen. Eliana and Audrey at the lawyer's office, the date stamp clear in the corner. Eliana signing papers, and, most importantly, a close-up of the original will's notary stamp and witnesses' signatures. She knew, I whispered. She knew they would try to hide it. Your grandmother was nobody's fool, dear. Audrey patted my hand. She played along because sometimes that's what we must do to protect what matters most, but she made sure to leave breadcrumbs. I thought of the locket, the hidden box, and now these photos, each piece carefully placed, waiting for me to find them. Would you be willing to make a statement? I asked. About witnessing the original will? I've been waiting 7 years to tell this story, Audrey replied firmly. It's time the truth saw daylight. Driving home, I felt lighter than I had in years. The pieces were falling into place. I had the original will, photographic evidence, and now a credible witness. But I needed more. My phone buzzed. A text from Caroline. Just remembered something else about that time. Mom mentioned a huge fight between your mother and Eliana at the hospital. Something about family legacy and proper management. Call me. I smiled, touching the locket at my throat. The truth wasn't just surfacing. It was rushing toward the light like a tide that couldn't be stopped. And this time, I was ready to ride the wave. The invitation arrived on cream-colored cardstock, embossed with gold lettering. Join us in celebrating the launch of Hudson Legacy Properties. Of course, Gabriel would use our grandmother's name to brand his latest venture. The venue was Eliana's favorite hotel, the Grand Metropolitan. I walked through its marble lobby wearing the one designer dress I owned, a notebook disguised as a clutch purse in my hand. "Alana," Gabriel's voice carried across the room. "You made it." He was wearing a new suit that probably cost more than my yearly salary. "Come meet some people." I let him guide me through the crowd, mentally noting each introduction. Real estate developers, investment bankers, trust fund managers, all of them praising Gabriel's natural business acumen and impressive portfolio growth. "It's all thanks to my grandmother's guidance," he told them, wearing false modesty like a second skin. "She knew the importance of keeping the family legacy in capable hands." I dug my nails into my palm to keep from screaming. "And this is Marcus Thompson," Gabriel continued, "head of First Capital Trust. They're handling all our family investments now." Marcus shook my hand. "Gabriel's been telling me about the remarkable estate portfolio he inherited. We're excited to help expand it further." I smiled sweetly. "Oh, you handle the entire estate, including the original trust documents?" Gabriel's hand tightened on my shoulder. "Sis, I think Mom's trying to get your attention." But Marcus was already answering. "Yes, we have everything dating back to the original transfer. Fascinating history there. The property on Maple Street alone. Alana!" My mother materialized beside us. "Come help me with something, dear." She practically dragged me to a quiet corner. "What are you doing?" "Just getting to know Gabriel's business associates," I said innocently. "Isn't that what these events are for?" "Don't play games," she hissed. "You're making people uncomfortable with your questions." Really? Because Marcus seemed quite comfortable discussing the estate details. Her face paled slightly. "That's all handled. It's been 7 years. Let it go." "Like you let go of Grandma's original will." The champagne glass nearly slipped from her hand. "What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about. The will that gave me the cottage. The one that disappeared after your hospital discussion with Grandma Eliana." "You're imagining things," she said, but her voice trembled. "Your grandmother changed her mind. She knew Gabriel would manage things better." "Did she change her mind before or after you threatened her?" "I never—" She stopped, composing herself. "This isn't the time or place." "No," I agreed, "but that time is coming." I left her standing there and circulated through the room, collecting business cards and conversations like ammunition. Every introduction was a potential witness. Every casual mention of Gabriel's inheritance was evidence of the lie they'd built their empire on. Near the bar, I overheard 2 developers discussing financing. "Impressive how quickly he leveraged that inheritance," one said. "Must have been, what, 15 million in assets?" "More like 20, the other replied. "The old lady knew what she was doing, leaving it all to him." I wrote down their names and companies in my notebook, then spotted Caroline entering the room. She made a beeline for me. "Got your text," she whispered. "Mom finally told me everything about that hospital fight. It was worse than we thought." "Tell me." Apparently, Aunt Ingrid threatened to contest the will on grounds of mental incompetency if Eliana didn't change it. Said she'd drag the whole family through a public legal battle. "And Grandma gave in?" Caroline shook her head. "Mom thinks she only pretended to. Said Eliana was too calm about it, like she had a plan." "She did," I murmured, touching my locket. She had several. The lights dimmed for Gabriel's presentation. A video began playing, showing various properties, including Eliana's cottage, with Hudson Legacy Properties superimposed over them. Our family's future, Gabriel announced from the podium, built on a foundation of trust and tradition. I slipped out my phone and quietly took photos of the screen, documenting every property he claimed as his. Then, I opened my email and sent a carefully worded message to the courthouse. Request for authentication of enclosed will document, dated, date. Suspect current will may be fraudulent. Evidence of substantial estate mismanagement attached. As I hit send, Gabriel was still speaking. This is just the beginning of what we can achieve together. He had no idea how right he was. This was indeed just the beginning, but not the one he had planned. I caught my mother watching me from across the room. I raised my champagne glass in a mock toast, and for the first time in 7 years, I saw real fear in her eyes. Good. She should be afraid, because the truth wasn't just surfacing anymore. It was about to explode. The law office of Darius Graham hadn't changed in 7 years. Same leather chairs, same pretentious oil paintings, same heavy oak desk designed to intimidate clients. But this time, I wasn't here as a grieving granddaughter. Miss Alana, Darius said, rising to greet me. What can I do for you today? I placed the original will on his desk without a word. His face went through a fascinating series of expressions: recognition, shock, and finally, fear. Where did you find this? He asked, voice carefully neutral. In a very interesting hiding place, I replied, along with Grandma Eliana's letter explaining why she felt the need to hide it. He reached for the document, but I pulled it back. Before you touch it, you should know it's been authenticated by an independent expert. The paper, ink, and signatures all match the time period. Darius loosened his tie. These things are complicated. Actually, I cut in, they're quite simple. You filed a fraudulent will. The question is, did you do it willingly, or did my mother convince you? Your mother was very persuasive about what was best for the family. I pulled out my phone and set it on the desk. Mind if I record this conversation? His eyes darted to the door. That won't be necessary. I think it will. See, I've been doing some research. The statute of limitations for will fraud is 10 years. We're at 7. And as the family's lawyer, you had a fiduciary duty to all beneficiaries, including me. Sweat beaded on his forehead. What do you want? The truth. All of it. Starting with the day my mother came to you about changing the will. He slumped in his chair. It was 3 days before your grandmother died. Ingrid brought in a new will. Said Eliana had changed her mind. I knew something wasn't right, but... She threatened to take all the family's business elsewhere. 3 generations of clients, gone. And she had information about some ethical shortcuts I'd taken years ago. I pressed record on my phone. Go on. For the next 30 minutes, Darius spilled everything. The threats, the cover-up, the careful manipulation of dates and documents. How my mother had orchestrated the whole thing, with Gabriel's eager cooperation. They said you'd never notice, he finished, that you were too naive to question it. They were wrong, I said, stopping the recording. And now you have a choice. You can either sign this affidavit telling the truth, or I can take this recording to the State Bar Association. His hand shook as he signed the paper. They'll destroy me for this. You destroyed yourself the moment you chose to help them steal my inheritance. I stood to leave, but he called after me. What will you do with all this? Justice takes many forms, Darius. You might want to warn your clients about what's coming. Outside, I sat in my car and made a call. Caroline, it's time. Send those financial records we discussed. Next, I emailed a carefully crafted tip to the state's Financial Oversight Board, detailing possible fraud in Gabriel's property dealings. The evidence was circumstantial, but it would be enough to trigger an audit. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "We need to talk," I replied. "Yes, we do, but not yet." Another buzz. "Whatever you think you're doing, stop. You'll destroy everything." I smiled, remembering Eliana's words in her letter. Some battles are won with whispers, not shouts. The whispers were starting. Soon they would become a roar. That evening, I visited Grandma Eliana's cottage, now part of Gabriel's luxury portfolio. The gardens were gone, replaced by manicured lawns. The library where we'd spent countless hours had been converted into a home office. I touched the locket at my throat, remembering her voice. "Legacy isn't about money, dear heart. It's about truth." My phone buzzed again. An email from the courthouse. "Petition to authenticate will received. Hearing date set." Perfect timing. The financial audit would hit just as the will challenge became public. Gabriel's house of cards would face a two-front war. I took out my notebook and reviewed my timeline. The pieces were all in place. Audrey's testimony, Darius's confession, Caroline's financial documents, the original will, and dozens of witnesses to Gabriel's fraudulent use of the inheritance. One final text arrived, from Caroline. "Mom finally broke down and told me everything. I'm with you, whatever you need." I drove home feeling lighter than I had in years. Tomorrow, I would file the final paperwork. Next week, the first headlines would appear. And soon, very soon, the truth would do what truth does best. It would set everything on fire. I was ready to watch it burn. The first crack in their perfect facade appeared in the business section. State investigators probe real estate empire's funding sources. Within hours, my mother had organized an emergency family dinner. I arrived last, deliberately late. The tension in the dining room was thick enough to cut with the antique silver knives laid out on Grandma Eliana's lace tablecloth. "Nice of you to join us!" Gabriel snapped, his usual smooth demeanor nowhere in sight. His phone kept buzzing. He'd check it, grimace, and silence it again. "Traffic," I said, taking my seat, "though I see I haven't missed much. Just the usual family secrets over soup?" My father choked on his wine. Mother's hand trembled as she served the salad. "I got an interesting call today," Gabriel said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Someone's been asking questions about grandmother's estate, about the source of my startup capital." I speared a cherry tomato. "How fascinating." "This is serious," my mother cut in. "These kinds of investigations can ruin reputations." "Like hiding a real will and presenting a fake one?" I asked casually. The silence was deafening. My father's fork clattered against his plate. "So," I continued, "shall we discuss it now or wait for the auditors to do it for us?" My mother stood abruptly. "Alana, kitchen, now." I followed her, noting how her perfect posture had developed a slight tremor. The moment the door swung shut, she turned on me. "You'll destroy everything we built," she hissed. "It was never yours to build," I replied. "Any of it. It was Grandma Eliana's, and she wanted to share it. She was going to ruin everything, splitting the estate, giving you that cottage. You had no idea how to manage that kind of wealth." "So you threatened her on her deathbed, forced her to change her will." "I protected this family's legacy." "You protected your control," I corrected. "And Gabriel's ego. Did you ever stop to think that maybe Grandma knew exactly what she was doing? That maybe I wasn't the naive one? You were? Her face went white. What do you mean? Check your email. I sent you something interesting about 20 minutes ago. She pulled out her phone, hands shaking. I watched as she opened the attachment, scanned copies of the original will, Eliana's letter, Darius's signed confession, and dozens of financial documents showing exactly how Gabriel had leveraged the fraudulent inheritance. This is just the beginning, I said quietly. Would you like to know what happens next? From the dining room, we heard Gabriel swear loudly, followed by the sound of breaking glass. Mother rushed back in. I followed more slowly, savoring the moment. Gabriel stood by the fireplace, his phone in pieces at his feet. "The bank!" he choked out. "They're freezing the business accounts pending investigation." "All of them?" Mother asked. "Everything tied to the inheritance, which is everything." My father finally spoke. "How bad is it?" "Bad," Gabriel admitted. "If they dig deep enough." He stopped, looking at me. "You. This is you, isn't it?" I pulled an envelope from my purse and placed it on the table. "Actually, this is me. Open it." Inside were invitations, printed on the same cream-colored cardstock Gabriel had used for his business launch. My mother read aloud. "You are cordially invited to a Truth and Legacy reception, to be held at 42 Maple Street." "The cottage," Gabriel whispered. "Grandma Eliana's cottage," I corrected, "which, according to property records currently being reviewed by state investigators, was never legally yours to develop." "You can't do this," my mother said. "I already have. The invitations went out to everyone. Your social circle, Gabriel's business associates, the press. Even Darius got one, though I doubt he'll attend. He's rather busy with the State Bar Association these days." Gabriel lunged forward, but my father caught his arm. "Don't," he warned. "You'll only make it worse." "Worse?" Gabriel laughed hysterically. "How could it get worse?" I stood, straightening my grandmother's locket. "I guess you'll find out at the reception. 1 week from today. Don't worry about RSVPing. I know you'll all be there." At the door, I turned back one last time. They stood frozen in their perfect dining room, surrounded by wealth built on lies, watching their carefully constructed world begin to crumble. "Oh, and Mother? Remember what you told me at the funeral? It's for your own good?" I smiled. "Turns out you were right. This is for my own good, and for Grandma Eliana's truth." I walked out into the night, leaving behind the sound of my mother's quiet sobs and Gabriel's string of curses. The truth was no longer just surfacing. It was breaking through with the force of a tsunami. And this was only the first wave. The cottage's garden had been restored to its former glory in just a week. Caroline had helped me replant Eliana's favorite roses, and Audrey had found the original wind chimes. As guests began arriving for the Truth and Legacy reception, the familiar tinkling sound carried on the breeze. "They're here," Caroline whispered, pointing to my parents' car pulling up the gravel drive. I straightened my grandmother's emerald brooch, found in a safe deposit box with her letter. "Places, everyone." The crowd was a perfect mix. Society matrons in pearls, business associates in suits, and journalists pretending not to be journalists. My mother's face went ashen when she saw the display tables. On them lay the evidence, beautifully presented like museum pieces. The original will under glass. Financial documents showing the money trail. Photos of Eliana signing her true will, with Audrey beside her. The hidden box from the attic. Even my grandmother's locket, opened to reveal her prophetic note. "You can't do this," my mother hissed, grabbing my arm. "Already doing it," I replied, gently removing her hand. "You might want to prepare, Gabriel. The reporters are particularly interested in how he leveraged fraudulent inheritance for his real estate empire." Gabriel burst through the door, his tie askew. "Stop this. Now." "Ladies and gentlemen," I said loudly, tapping a glass, "thank you all for coming to honor my grandmother Eliana's true legacy." The room fell silent. Even the wind chimes seemed to pause. 7 years ago, many of you attended a funeral and witnessed what appeared to be the reading of my grandmother's will. That will, as documents here prove, was fraudulent. Gasps and whispers rippled through the crowd. Cameras clicked. The truth, which my grandmother carefully preserved, is that she intended her estate to be shared. She believed in legacy, yes, but not the kind built on lies and manipulation. I nodded to Audrey, who stepped forward. "I witnessed Eliana sign her real will. She was clear-minded and determined. What happened afterward was nothing short of criminal conspiracy." My mother swayed slightly. My father caught her elbow. "But don't take my word for it," I continued. "Mr. Graham?" Darius stepped out from the crowd, looking years older than he had a week ago. "The will presented at Eliana's funeral was falsified under pressure from certain family members. I have provided a full confession to the relevant authorities." Gabriel lunged forward. "He's lying! This is all lies! Really?" I picked up a remote and clicked. The cottage's modern TV screen, Gabriel's one renovation I'd kept, flickered to life, showing security footage from his office. There he was, clear as day, bragging to investors about leveraging his inheritance, detailing exactly how he'd used Eliana's money to build his empire. "Turn it off!" he demanded. "Why? These are your words, Gabriel. Your lies. Your fraud. You self-righteous bitch!" he snarled. "You think you're so clever. You've destroyed everything." "No." Caroline stepped forward. "You destroyed everything when you stole what was rightfully hers." The crowd parted as Marcus Thompson from First Capital Trust walked in. "Mr. Hudson, in light of these revelations, I regret to inform you that our firm is severing all ties with your organization. We'll be cooperating fully with investigators." More whispers. More cameras. My mother sank into a chair. "I've filed a formal challenge to the fraudulent will," I announced. "The courts have already frozen all assets pending investigation, but this isn't about money. It's about truth." I walked to the display table and picked up my grandmother's locket. Eliana Hudson taught me that legacy isn't measured in dollars or properties. It's measured in truth, in dignity, in doing what's right even when others try to bury it. She left breadcrumbs for me to follow, knowing that someday I would understand. I turned to my family. "You taught me silence. My grandmother taught me dignity. Today, I've reclaimed both." The reporters surged forward with questions. Gabriel stormed out, followed by my father half carrying my mother. But I wasn't done. "One more thing," I said. "To honor my grandmother's true wishes, I'm establishing the Eliana Hudson Foundation for Historical Preservation. Half of the recovered estate will fund restoration projects for historical properties, ensuring that no legacy is ever lost or buried." Applause broke out. Caroline hugged me. Audrey wiped away tears. Later, as the last guests left, I stood in Eliana's garden. The wind chimes sang their gentle song, and for the first time in 7 years, I felt her presence. Not in grief or anger, but in triumph. My phone buzzed with news alerts already covering the story. Real estate empire built on fraudulent will crumbles, and family scandal rocks social elite. But the headline I loved most was the simplest. Hidden will reveals long-buried truth. Truth, like my grandmother always said, has a way of surfacing, and sometimes it surfaces with a vengeance. The autumn wind rustled through the garden as I placed fresh roses on Eliana's grave. The morning dew still clung to the petals, catching light like tiny diamonds. "The courts made it official yesterday," I said to the granite headstone. "Everything's been set right." My phone buzzed. Another news alert about Gabriel. After the scandal broke, his empire had collapsed like a house of cards. 3 of his major developments had been seized by creditors. The last I'd heard, he'd fled to Mexico to avoid fraud charges. "You should see the cottage now," I continued, adjusting the flowers. "Caroline helped me restore everything exactly as you had it. Even found that old recipe box hidden behind the kitchen tiles." "Alana," I turned to see my father standing awkwardly by the cemetery gate. He'd aged a decade in the past few weeks. "Dad, what are you doing here?" He walked over slowly, hands in his pockets. "I've been coming every morning, trying to find the courage to say I'm sorry." "To Grandma? Or to me?" "Both." He cleared his throat. "I knew what your mother and Gabriel were doing. I told myself it wasn't my business, that staying quiet was easier. Easier than standing up for what's right. Easier than admitting I was a coward." He touched the headstone gently. "Eliana always saw right through me. Said I needed to grow a spine before it was too late." My phone buzzed again. A text from Caroline. "Mom finally talked to Aunt Ingrid. It got ugly. Call me." "How is Mom?" I asked. "Broken. The social humiliation hit her harder than the legal consequences. She's talking about moving away, starting fresh somewhere." "And you?" He met my eyes for the first time. "I filed for divorce yesterday." The wind chimes from the cottage drifted over on the breeze. I remembered Eliana telling me that wind chimes were voices of the past, speaking to the present. "I found this in the recipe box," I said, pulling out an old photograph. It showed my father, much younger, helping Eliana plant roses. Both were laughing. His hands trembled as he took it. I remember that day, before the money and status became everything, before I forgot who I was. "And who are you now?" "Someone trying to make things right." He handed me an envelope. "I've signed over my portion of the recovered estate to your foundation. It's not much, but it's a start," I said. My phone buzzed one final time, an email from Audrey. "The first restoration project is ready. Come see." "I have to go," I told my father. "The foundation is starting work on an old library downtown." He nodded. "Eliana would have loved that." Yes, she would. I turned to leave, then paused. "Dad, there's a volunteer orientation next week if you're interested. The library needs people who know their way around old books." A faint smile crossed his face. "I'll think about it." Back at the cottage, Caroline was waiting with coffee and news. "Gabriel's accounts are frozen. The investigators found evidence of tax fraud going back years." "And Mom?" "Complete meltdown. She's checking into some exclusive retreat in Arizona. Says she needs to find herself." I laughed. "Maybe she'll actually find her conscience while she's at it." "The lawyers called," Caroline added. "They need you to sign the final paperwork for the foundation." I picked up my grandmother's locket, now restored to its original shine. Inside, her note remained. "Trust time. Truth always surfaces." You know what's funny? I said. Everyone thought Grandma Eliana was this proper society lady who cared about appearances, but she was really a master strategist. She knew exactly what would happen, and she planned for it perfectly. Caroline smiled. She knew you'd figure it out. That's why she left the breadcrumbs. Not breadcrumbs, I corrected. Lessons about patience, timing, and the power of truth. The wind chimes sang again as a fresh breeze swept through the garden. Somewhere in that melody, I could hear Eliana's laugh, not mocking or vindictive, but satisfied. Justice had been served, not with a shout, but with carefully orchestrated whispers. I touched the emerald brooch at my collar. Ready to go restore some history? Caroline linked her arm through mine. Lead the way, boss. As we walked to the car, I glanced back at the cottage. The roses were blooming, the wind chimes were singing, and the truth, the whole truth, was finally free. Karma, as it turns out, isn't poetic. She's surgical. And when she cuts, she never misses. Just ask my family. They learned that lesson the hard way. But me, I learned it from the best. Thanks, Grandma.